Dear self, why do people today have access to a huge amount of information every day, but the ability to think deeply and understand the core of themselves is decreasing? This is not a question of simply the quantity or quality of information, but a question of how we use and receive it. If thousands of years ago people could meditate all day to ponder the meaning of a philosophy or the nature of the universe, do they today take just a few minutes to stop and really think about themselves? Modern society prides itself on the fact that we live in the information age. With just a click of a mouse, you can know everything from human history to the hottest news around the world. But take a deeper look at what the information you consume every day really is. Are short videos that flash by in a few seconds? Are headlines that are sensational? Or are they content designed to keep the table leg as long as possible on social media? Does this really make you wiser or just fill your mind with food? Fleeting content without depth does not bring real value to life. Sincere greetings to you and your friends in this world. The way you receive information is no longer entirely up to you to decide. Intelligent algorithms are designed to predict your emotional and behavioral preferences. You are not just receiving information, you are being led by it. The danger here is not how much or how little you know, but how you no longer control your own flow of thought when everything you see is created to keep you in a state of mental busyness. Do you have any space to reflect, analyze, or ask yourself what is really important in reality? People are not lost because of lack of information, but because they forget how to find meaning in information. This loss does not only come from outside, but is also deeply ingrained in the way we perceive life. What we see is not the real world, but a version that is arranged by others for us to see. From intentional news to shiny images on social media, all lead us to an idealized version of reality. But that is not the truth. How to escape this maze? How to regain mindfulness in the mind in a world filled with noise? This is not an easy thing. It requires you to face yourself. Look deep into your mind to distinguish what is real and what is fake, but the first thing you need to do is stop and ask yourself, are you living your own life, or are you being caught up in a reality that others have created for you? Mindfulness starts from the moment you admit that you may have been lost. Mindfulness is a long journey where you have to learn to think independently, find out your core values, and sometimes even have to go against the flow of society. But remember that as long as you dare to face this question, you have started the journey to return to yourself, where meaning and freedom truly exist. We are living in a world where information is everywhere, from the small phone in your hand to the big screens on the street. Do you recognize, turn out, that every day your mind are consuming a huge amount of information that people in the last century could not have imagined? But paradoxically, the more information we have, the more confused and disoriented we feel. Why is that? First of all, let's look at the way information is presented in modern society. Social media platforms, online newspapers, and media channels do not just provide information, they are deliberately designed to attract your attention. Sensational headlines, instant images, and short but dramatic status lines do not appear by accident. They are created to exploit the natural human instinct to be curious, anxious, and crave social validation. As a result, instead of actively choosing information, you are caught up in a vortex of information that is set up by algorithms. This dominance does not stop at the way you receive information, but also affects the way you think. When you read an article, skim through a status line on social media, or watch a short video, do you stop to ask yourself, does this make sense? What is valuable to me here that I need to analyze more deeply? Most of us do not do that. We passively receive information and let it flow like a flood without thinking. This causes the ability of people to think independently to be eroded more and more. Look at a simple example when you surf social media and see someone sharing a story that is very emotional. Do you really wonder if the story is true, or do you just feel sympathetic, angry, or sad and quickly share? It continues without verification. This is how fake information and illusions creep into your mind, making you believe in things that are not necessarily true and eventually making you lose the ability to analyze deeply. The modern human mind is not only filled with fake information but also distracted by the abundance of unnecessary information. Think about how many of the hundreds of articles, videos, or images you access every day are really worth your time to ponder. People today are not lacking information without selection and analysis. We consume information in such a hurry that if we don't update enough, we will fall behind. But the truth is that it is the information overload that is making our minds heavier and more vague. What are the consequences of this? First, you easily get lost in the views imposed by others. When you don't have time to reflect, you will easily accept everything according to the float, believing that what you see is the truth. Second, you lose the ability to focus in a world where everything is designed to attract short-term attention. How can you spend enough time to really dig into a problem? And finally, you lose connection with yourself when all your time is spent skimming through external information. Do you have any space to listen to your inner self? The problem here is not just the amount of information, but how we receive and process it. If we don't learn to control the flow of information into our minds, we will forever be swept away in a stream water, no destination. This is not only a reality, but also a warning. Stop and look deep into yourself. Are you in control of your mind, or are you letting it be manipulated by what others want you to see? Only when you start asking this question can you escape the domination of the endless information world. Why is it increasingly difficult for modern people to escape their own confusion? What is the origin of this unconsciousness? To understand better, we need to look deeply into the factors that have been shaping the way people perceive, process, and react to the world around them. It is not just a story about the amount of information, but also about its nature and how it manipulates our minds. Imagine you walk into a party full of eye-catching dishes, but most of it is just junk food lacking in nutrition. At first, you are attracted by the visual appeal and taste, but then you realize your body is tired and lacking in vitality. This is how our minds react to the content that social networks provide, which is short and full of superficial entertainment. Short posts, videos just a few seconds, or status lines designed to shock all just for the purpose of maintaining instant attention. But what we don't realize is that our minds are being filled with content that lacks depth, leading to a real nutritional deficiency for thinking. Psychology shows that digital platforms exploit dopamine, a neurotransmitter associated with feelings of satisfaction, to keep us engaged. Every time you get a like, comment, or a notification, your brain releases a small amount of dopamine, creating a feeling of satisfaction. Temporary satisfaction, but this satisfaction is not sustainable. And to get that feeling again, you keep scrolling and searching. As a result, we develop a habit of relying on short-term information intake, which reduces our ability to think deeply and analyze emotions' trap of illusion. Try to imagine the information world as a giant mirror. But the problem is this mirror does not reflect the truth, but only shows you the images it wants you to believe. Digital platforms are not neutral tools. They are designed to keep you there for as long as possible. This leads to the creation of a reality where you are drawn into images, stories, and information that are carefully crafted to stimulate your emotions. See is where the emotional deception lies. Social media content is often crafted to impress you into believing that it is important or worthwhile. But when you step away from the screen and look at reality, you realize that the world you thought you understood was just an algorithmic illusion. As a result, your perception is distorted and you gradually lose the ability to distinguish between what is real and what is just an illusion. A serious consequence of living in a world filled with virtual information is that people are increasingly alienated from themselves. Ask yourself how much time you spend each day listening to your inner self in the chaos of modern society. We are so busy reacting to what is happening outside that we forget to ask ourselves what we really want. What is really important to us when our minds are filled with unnecessary information? You no longer have space to reflect on yourself. You start living according to the standards set by society instead of finding your core values. This not only weakens your self-awareness, but also makes you susceptible to being caught up in the meaningless currents of society where everything is determined by what others want you to believe. The result is a loss of consciousness. Not only reduces your ability to think independently, but also makes you lose yourself. You are not only controlled by external information, but also manipulated by the very habits and perceptions that you have unwittingly created to regain your awareness. You need to learn how to overcome these traps. Start by identifying them and then gradually rebuilding your connection with your inner self. Like that, only then can you truly escape the maze of information and find your way back to yourself in a world where the human mind is constantly being pulled by endless streams of information. Awareness is no longer a natural state, but a skill that needs to be practiced. How can you find yourself again amidst the countless noise around you? The answer lies in establishing the laws of consciousness where you are angry. Regaining control of your mind and emotions. The first step to awareness is learning to ask questions every time you receive information. Ask yourself, what does this person want from me through the information they provide? This question helps you see the intention behind the words. Images or videos you see, are they trying to sell a product? Change your perspective or simply seek attention when you start analyzing. Like that, you will realize that not all information is reliable and not all emotions you experience are really yours. Continue with the question, does this really matter?